Hello and welcome back to A Rose by Any Other Name, the vodcast where we pull Shakespeare apart piece by piece and work out what his plays are actually doing. I'm Mr. Rose, and today we're looking at Act 3, Scene 1 of Othello. It is a short scene. It contains a musician joke that has aged in a very Shakespearean way, and it looks at first like a little more than Cassio arranging a performance. But this is the doorway into the most important act of the play. Cassio has lost his position. He wants to repair his reputation and recover Othello's trust. Iago has advised him to ask Desdemona for help. So Cassio arrives early in the morning with musicians, hoping to honor Othello and begin making peace. The musicians are dismissed. Cassio then relies on the clown, Iago, and Emilia to gain access to Desdemona. Every step towards reconciliation must pass through somebody else. That matters because Othello is a play about who controls access, information, and interpretation. Cassio thinks he's organizing a private conversation. Iago knows he's arranging a public image that can be made to look suspicious. So, our central question for this scene is, how does Shakespeare use comedy, sound, and mediation to prepare the audience for a tragedy? There are my AI generated characters in case you need them. So, the scene in brief. The scene begins outside Othello's residence in Cyprus. It is morning, following the drunken brawl that cost Cassio his position as lieutenant in our last scene. Cassio arrives with a group of musicians. He pays them to play a brief morning greeting for Othello, presumably as a gesture of respect and an attempt to restore goodwill. A clown enters and mocks the musicians with a series of puns about their instruments. He asks whether their instruments have been in Naples because they speaketh through the nose, a joke about nasal music and disease. He then gives them money from Othello and politely, or perhaps not especially politely, tells them to stop making noise. Cassio asks the clown to find Emilia, the woman who attends Desdemona and is also the wife of Iago. Once again, the clown responds with some wordplay, but accepts Cassio's money and leaves to deliver the message. Iago enters. Cassio explains that he has already asked Emilia to help him gain access to Desdemona. Iago offers to send Emilia out and says he will arrange for Othello to be moved away so Cassio and Desdemona can speak more freely. Cassio is grateful and describes Iago as the kindest and most honest Florentine he's ever known. The audience, naturally, is invited to scream internally, because that's what I did. Emilia arrives and reveals that Desdemona is already arguing strongly for Cassio's reinstatement. Othello still loves Cassio and wants to restore him, but he believes that he must delay because Montano, the man that Cassio wounded, is powerful and respected in Cyprus. So Cassio nevertheless asks to speak privately with Desdemona. Emilia agrees and takes him inside. Nothing violent occurs, no new lie is told directly to Othello, yet by the end of this scene, Cassio and Desdemona are being placed together. Othello can be moved out of the way, and Iago has control when the characters will see one another. The trap is no longer only an idea, it now has a time, a place, and a meeting. So, what is Shakespeare doing here? He opens Act 3 with an attempted restoration of harmony. Cassio brings music because music traditionally suggests order, harmony, and social unity. After the chaos of the previous night, he wants to replace the sounds of drunken shouting and clashing swords with a respectful morning greeting. The gesture also resembles a type of serenade. Cassio hopes performance can repair damaged relationships and signal that he remains courteous, disciplined, and loyal. The attempt, however, fails immediately. Othello does not appear, the music is dismissed, and Cassio remains outside. Harmony is offered, but not heard. That failed performance quietly anticipates the larger collapse of harmony within Othello's marriage and command. Shakespeare decides to use comedy as a pause before the tragedy accelerates. So the clown's puns create this comic relief after the violence of Act 2, Scene 3. His jokes about noses, wind, and tails would have invited a mixture of laughing and groaning from Shakespeare's audience, rather like a modern dad joke with considerably more bodily humour. This comedy gives the audience a brief release, but it also creates contrast. Act 3 will contain the play's psychological turning point. Beginning with silliness makes the darkness that follows even sharper. The scene reminds us that tragedy does not mean every moment must be solemn. Shakespeare uses changes in tone to control attention, to control attention, delay tension, and make the descent even more unsettling. Shakespeare decides to make language unstable. So the clown repeatedly twists what other characters say. Tail, Tale, becomes tail, Tail, and here is taken literally. Uh, The polite requests become these opportunities for jokes. In this comic exchange, unstable meaning is harmless. Everyone understands that the clown is playing with language, yet the scene prepares us for a far more dangerous form of reinterpretation. Iago also takes words and actions away from their intended meanings. Cassio's respectful request will become evidence of secret desire, and Desdemona's advocacy will become evidence of infidelity. The clown plays with ambiguity for amusement. Iago, however, weaponizes it. Shakespeare decides to show Cassio trying to perform his way back into favor. Cassio's reputation has been damaged publicly, so he attempts a public display of respect. He pays musicians, offers money to the clown, thanks Iago, and carefully seeks a meeting through Amelia. These actions show courtesy and persistence, but they also reveal how dependent Cassio is on social performance. He cannot simply approach Othello. He must rebuild the appearance of honor through gestures, through the intermediaries, and the support of respected people. If you were looking at this through an external exam, it can help connect the scene to the theme of reputation. Identity in Othello is not purely internal, it's shaped by what others see, repeat, and believe. Shakespeare decides to give Iago control over access and space. Iago offers to draw the Moor out of the way, so Cassio can speak to Desdemona freely. On the surface, it seems generous. Dramatically, it gives Iago control over who is present, who is absent, and when the encounter occurs. This is an important part of Iago's power. He does not only control stories, he arranges the physical circumstances that will make those stories appear true. In the next major scene, Othello will arrive as Cassio leaves Desdemona. Iago will then interpret Cassio's departure as suspicious. The visual evidence is genuine, but the timing has been engineered. Shakespeare decides to continue this pattern of honest Iago. Cassio calls Iago kind and honest because Iago appears to be helping him recover his position. The judgment is reasonable from Cassio's limited perspective. As the audience, we know that Iago has caused Cassio's downfall and is now controlling his attempt at recovery. This creates dramatic irony and demonstrates the strength of Iago's performance. Iago's reputation does more than hide his villainy. It allows him to place people exactly where he needs them while receiving their gratitude for doing so. Shakespeare develops Amelia as an important intermediary. Amelia is not yet openly resisting her husband, Iago. She carries messages, provides information, and helps Cassio arrange the meeting with Desdemona. Her actions are compassionate and practical. She knows Desdemona is already advocating for Cassio and wants to reassure him that Othello still values him. However, Amelia's position between the major characters will become increasingly important. She moves between private and public spaces and has access to information that others do not. In this scene, that access helps Iago's plan unintentionally. Later, it will help expose him. Shakespeare decides to have Othello's delay as political and not personal. Emilia explains that Othello loves Cassio and intends to restore him when a safe opportunity arises. His hesitation is connected to Montano's status in Cyprus. This detail prevents us from reading Othello as cruel or unforgiving. He's balanced personal loyalty against political responsibility. Reinstating Cassio immediately could insult Montano and weaken Othello's authority on the island. The tragedy is therefore built on a frustrating irony. Cassio may not need Desdemona's intervention at all. Othello already wants him back. By pushing harder for a private meeting, Cassio unknowingly creates the appearance that Iago needs. And lastly, Shakespeare decides to turn a transitional scene into dramatic preparation. Act 3, Scene 1 does not contain a major confrontation, but it performs essential dramatic work. Cassio gains access to Desdemona. Desdemona's support is confirmed, and Othello's continuing affection for Cassio is established, while Iago controls the arrangement. Shakespeare is effectively setting the stage for Act 3, Scene 3. Each character enters that turning point with a reasonable goal. Cassio wants his job, Desdemona wants to help, Othello wants political stability, and Emilia wants to support them. Iago's advantage is that he understands all of those goals and can make them collide. So, our audience positioning. At first, we're positioned to enjoy the comic interruption of the musicians and the clown. The musicians and the clown delay the plot and provide relief after the violent end of Act 2. That amusement soon gives way to dramatic irony. Cassio praises Iago's kindness, while we know that Iago created the problem Cassio is asking him to solve. Cassio's gratitude makes his vulnerability painfully clear. We're also positioned to sympathize with Cassio. His plan is sensible, polite, and morally innocent. Desdemona is already speaking for him, and Othello still loves him. Reconciliation does appear close. At the same time, Shakespeare wants the audience to notice what the characters cannot. Iago is controlling the meeting. We understand that the private conversation will not remain private in meaning. It will be observed, framed, and used. The result is anticipation rather than surprise. We know the next step of Iago's plan, but we cannot prevent good intentions from walking directly into it. Let's have a look at our key quotes now. Masters play here, something that's brief and bid good morrow general. Cassio's request is respectful and carefully controlled. The music is intended as a brief gesture of honor rather than disruptive performance. The greeting shows Cassio trying to restore his public image through courtesy. His recovery begins with performance because his reputation was damaged by a public loss of control. Why, masters, have your instruments been in Naples, that they speaketh through nose thus? Said by the clown. The clown personifies the instruments as speaking through their nose. The joke links their nasal sound with Naples and potentially with disease. The humor introduces the scene's interest in sound and meaning. Instruments speak, but their message can be mocked, misunderstood, or silenced. The general so likes your music that he desires you, for love's sake, to make no more noise with it. The sentence is sarcastically polite. When the clown claims that Othello likes the music, it is immediately contradicted by the instruction to stop. Shakespeare turns attempted harmony into unwanted noise. This failed serenade foreshadows a world in which communication increasingly produces disorder rather than connection. Any music that may not be heard. The paradox imagines music that cannot be heard. It extends the joke while emphasizing the failure of Cassio's message to reach Othello. Sound and silence become symbolically important. Cassio wants his loyalty to be heard, but Iago will ensure that suspicion speaks loudly more loudly, sorry, than truth. Procure me some access. When Cassio says, my suit to her is that she will, to virtuous Desdemona, procure me some access, the formal language of suit and access presents Cassio's request as respectful and procedural. He also identifies Desdemona as virtuous. The audience knows that there is no sexual intention in the meeting. This establishes the truth before Iago supplies a false interpretation in the following scenes. I'll devise a mean to draw them more out of the way, that your converse and business may be more free. Iago presents Othello's absence as a helpful way to give Cassio privacy. The verb devise quietly reveals planning and control. The line shows Iago choreographing the tragedy. He arranges who will meet, who will be absent, and what Othello may later see when he returns. I never knew a Florentine more kind and honest. Cassio's praise here contains devastating dramatic irony. The comparative more suggests that Iago appears exceptionally generous and trustworthy. Iago's apparent help strengthens the reputation that protects him. Cassio cannot recognize that the man offering the solution is also the author of the problem. The general and his wife are talking of it, and she speaks for you stoutly. The adverb stoutly presents Desdemona as firm and energetic in Cassio's defense. Her advocacy has already begun before Cassio meets her privately. This confirms Desdemona's loyalty and generosity. Iago will later detach that behavior from its moral context and represent persistence as sexual interest. He who hurt is of great fame in Cyprus and great affinity, that in wholesome wisdom he might not but refuse you. Emilia is reporting what is being said. So Othello's refusal is explained through political necessity. Montano's fame and connection means Cassio cannot be restored immediately without consequence. The phrase wholesome wisdom characterizes Othello's judgment as sensible and responsible at this stage of the play. It provides a sharp contrast with the distorted judgment that jealousy will produce. But he protests he loves you and needs no other suitor but his likings to bring you in again. Amelia is letting us know that Othello's affection for Cassio remains intact. He does not need to be persuaded that Cassio has value, only to find an appropriate time for reinstatement. This makes Iago's scheme even more tragic. The relationships he attacks are capable of repair, but his manipulation turns unnecessary intervention into apparent evidence of betrayal. And lastly, give me advantage of some brief discourse with Desdemona alone. Cassio asks for a short private conversation because he wants to explain his situation freely. The request is practical, not romantic. He knows that Desdemona is on his side, but he just wants to make sure that she's aware of his side. However, such words as alone can be made suspicious once removed from context. The line shows the gap between innocent intention and damaging appearance that Iago will exploit. So, bringing it together, Act 3, Scene 1 is a scene of access. Cassio cannot reach Othello directly, so he moves through musicians, the clown, Iago, Emilia, and finally Desdemona. Each intermediary appears to bring him closer to reconciliation. However, the most important intermediary is Iago. He controls the physical arrangement of the meeting and will soon control its meaning. Cassio believes privacy will help him speak honestly. Iago knows that the appearance of privacy can be constructed and recreated to mean suspicion. The comic language at the beginning also prepares us for danger. The clown twists words playfully, revealing how easily language can carry more than one meaning. Iago performs the darker version of the same act. He turns, or he turns loyalty into desire, advocacy into guilt, and kindness into evidence. If you are looking at this for an external exam, do not dismiss this as a filler scene. A strong response can argue that Shakespeare is using comic relief, failed music, dramatic irony, and controlled staging to establish the conditions required for the tragedy's major turning point. On the screen, I have my exam focused questions. I'm not going to go through them. It is important for you to have a go answering these. Most of the answers are within this video. My final challenge for you is I want you to choose one apparently helpful action from the scene, whether it is Cassio hiring the musicians, the clown carrying his message, Iago arranging privacy, Amelia reassuring Cassio, or Desdemona advocating for Cassio. Explain the action's innocent purpose and then analyze how its appearance could be manipulated by Iago. Finish by linking this gap between intention and interpretation to appearance and reality, trust or reputation. That movement from what a character means to what another character sees to what Iago makes it mean is an excellent structure for an analytical paragraph. So, Act 3, Scene 1 ends with Cassio finally gaining the private meeting he wants. Reconciliation seems possible. Desdemona is willing to help, and Othello still loves his former lieutenant. Unfortunately, Iago has arranged the view. So, next, Othello briefly attends to Cyprus's fortifications before Shakespeare moves us to Act 3, Scene 3, the temptation scene and the major turning point of the play. Until then, I am Mr. Rose, and this has been A Rose by Any Other Name. Thank you.